Let's talk about how to come up with the best art style for your indie game. I'm by no means an expert on that, but I want to share my thoughts anyway. First of all, I think about what really matters to me. So my top 5 points are I want the art style to be attention grabbing. That means it needs to be unique, there needs to be a lot of contrasts, and it needs to be somewhat strange and memorable. So basically what that means is it really has to stand out. Why do I put attention first? Because this is the easiest way to fail as an indie game. If nobody notices your game, game over. So that's why I put it number 1. It's really important that the art style stands out. That's really what makes or breaks the marketing success that you have. As I've just said, obviously I don't have a lot of experience, but sounds pretty logical, doesn't it? Okay. My number 2 is the art style needs to fit the game and the target audience. And my target audience is RTS players, casual but hardcore. My game is pretty simplistic. There's not a lot you can do, so casual players can definitely play it. But I feel like it's definitely gonna be more suitable for the more hardcore-ish casual player, if that makes sense, because it's definitely gonna be a challenging game, and it's still quite complicated because it's a new concept, so people can't really transfer their knowledge about the game from a different game. They have to learn everything from scratch. That's what pushes it a bit more to the hardcore side, and also the fact that it's a strategy game, which is definitely not everybody's thing. But in general, this differentiation between casual and hardcore is honestly not that important, so let's forget about that. The art style should definitely reflect that it's a simplistic game, so it attracts players who like simplistic games, and it should also look like a challenging game, because it will be a challenging game, and if somebody downloads the game and thinks it's gonna be super duper easy, that person will not enjoy the game. We better make it look difficult, otherwise we attract the wrong audience, and that audience won't like the game, which means bad reviews, which means lower sales. So the art style has to fit the game that I'm making, or that you're making, and it also has to be suitable for your target audience, and you need to know what your target audience is. Sometimes you only figure that out later on, so yeah, but it's definitely something you need to keep in mind. Then my number 3 is it needs to look clear and clean. So I don't want to have a lot of clutter on the screen. The information that you need to play the game should be instantly obvious. Yeah, so this is something that can mess with the watchability. So if somebody stumbles across a let's play of my game, I don't want them to be completely confused by all the things that are flying around on the screen, like pew 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 pew, and they're just, okay, I don't understand that, and they click away. Watchability nowadays is really important actually. If a game is fun to watch on video, more people will buy it, a lot more. That's how I think this world works. Maybe I'm wrong, who knows. Nonetheless, we can't argue that a clear and clean look in a simplistic game is definitely something we need to shoot for. So that means it needs to be uncluttered, there needs to be good color coding, good silhouettes, and simplistic shapes that you recognize. Then on place 4 is it needs to be beautiful. It needs to have good design, good colors, good atmosphere. Definitely super important, because if it looks beautiful, it's automatically more fun to play. You enjoy your time in that game a lot more. But it's only on place 4. It's definitely... I feel like it's not the most important thing, at least for my project. Okay, you need to do a priority list like this for your project, because maybe you will have different priorities, but before you start to design anything, you need to know what you want as an end result. So you definitely need something like this, otherwise, what are you designing? What? Tell me. What are you trying to achieve? You need to know what you're trying to achieve. So my last point is it needs to be self-explanatory. That means when you see the play, so again it's about watchability and also about learning the game. When you see how somebody plays the game, the art style should explain how the game works. So for example, I have these little objects that split after a couple of seconds into 2 new creatures. And I call them eggs, because that instantly makes it more understandable what they do. People know. An egg is usually something that is static, doesn't move, is vulnerable, and after a while a living thing comes out of it. So if I literally use eggs as graphics for these objects, that's pretty self-explanatory, because the objects behave exactly the same way in real life. So what you're trying to do with a self-explanatory art style or setting is choosing objects that behave in the same way in real life. Does that make sense? Yes, I think it does. Then obviously 2 little extras are, it shouldn't be too hard to make, because I'm just one person, so it needs to be an art style that I can realize myself, and it shouldn't be offensive to anybody. So those are just 2 obvious things, 2 additional limitations. So that's the basic framework. Next up, what I did is I made a list of settings and art styles. Setting is basically where the game plays. Does it play in space? Are there little creatures? Are there robots? What is the game about? Does it play in Middle Age? Are there knights with swords? Or are there fantasy creatures? Or is it maybe completely abstract and there are just triangles and circles? So what is the game about? That's the setting. The art style, however, is how you display or how you show your setting. So let me give you a couple of examples for both of these. Setting, maybe I have a magical dark grassland, or maybe a place in space or on a water surface, or I could have flying cyberpunk robots. You see, none of that is really specific, it's really just a couple of ideas. Then dragons and eggs, then flying ice turning into crusty eggs, a couple of weird things mixed in there. And then on the other side I have art styles. These are all the ways I could use to create the graphics, okay? So I could draw them with pencils, I could use vector graphics, I could paint them with real paint, with acrylic paint, I could use digital painting, I could mix acrylic paint and digital painting, I could use a program like Blender to mix, to create 3D objects and render them as sprites. I could use pixel art, I could scribble with a pen and a ruler and then scan the stuff in and cut it out in Photoshop. I could use colored pencils in combination with 3D rendered stuff, so I could something I drew by hand as 3D texture. I could use stop motion with modeling clay. Trashy objects, what I mean by that is basically using random objects that I have in the house and turning them into little creatures. So maybe I have a garbage can and I find something that looks like ice and I put it on the garbage can, and then I can use stop motion to animate the garbage can. Something like this could be really funny. Then you could also go for really crappy style, that can also work, or just some random swirly shader stuff. And so now what I did is I looked again at my requirements and chose 4 settings that I thought would fit my requirements in combination with 4 art styles that I think also fit my requirements. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to create 4 complete art styles, and that's definitely something I recommend to you as well. You should try a couple of different things, don't just choose one thing and then go with it. Experiment with a couple of things, okay? If you have a very minimalistic game like I do, you can implement the art style into the game. That's what I'm gonna do. I will also implement all of those 4 art styles I create into the game and see how they feel. If you have a little larger game and you can't do that, then at least make some sketches and try to create some fake screenshots, some photo bashing to see how those art styles would look in game. But it's obviously better if you can bring them into the game. That way you get a way better feel how it's actually gonna work out. Yeah, so now I always selected 2 of them. Here I have Magical Dark Grassland, and I want to realize this setting with acrylic paint and Photoshop. That's gonna be pretty interesting. Then the next one is Space Creatures, and I want to do that with modeling clay and stop motion. Next one I need to try is Flying Cyberpunk Robots. I'll do that with 3D rendered sprites, dragons and eggs, with digital painting. So those are the 4 combinations I will try. Then once you've tried all of them, you can just choose the best one, the most fitting one. It's obviously perfect if you ask your target audience which of them they like best. This way you get the best intel, I guess. Just keep in mind that the ideas I just mentioned are pretty rough, okay? All of the settings and art styles I chose here could be either executed in a really awesome way, or they could also be executed in a really poor way. The idea and the planning is one thing, but what makes or breaks your art style is 90% the execution. So yeah, choosing the right stuff and thinking about it beforehand, definitely useful, but you can still mess up or make a bad idea pretty awesome. If you want to know how I executed the ideas I chose in this video, stay tuned, and maybe I will link the videos somewhere here once they're out. Thanks for watching, make the world your playground, and see you tomorrow.